Welcome to the Positive Productivity Podcast, episode 300. The Positive Productivity Podcast was created to empower entrepreneurs to achieve and appreciate personal and professional success. I'm your host, Kim Sutton, and if you're ready, let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Positive Productivity. This is your host, Kim Sutton, and today I am thrilled to have Steve Olsher as our guest. Listeners, you've probably, undoubtedly heard previous guests and I talk about Steve just a few times in mentioning the New Media Summit, but Steve is also the author of What is Your What? Internet Profits. He's the host of Reinvention Radio and the founder, creator, curator, what would you call it, Steve, of New Media Summit?
At this point, yeah. New Media Summit, yeah, that for sure. I didn't know where we were going with that one. Yes. So, correct. New Media Summit. That is correct. Founder, creator,
all of the
host,
above. Yeah.
Lead dance dude.
Steve, I would love if you would take us back a little bit before everything that I just talked about. What did you want to be when you grew up? And I'm not saying that either of us is grown up. I don't think I'll ever grow up. But when you were a child, what did you want to be?
It's interesting. I wasn't like one of those, I know I want to be this kind of thing. I definitely had a bug for music, and I did a lot of DJing and, played drums for years and so on. So, probably something music related. I
didn't know that. I didn't know you had I guess let me try that again.
Did you know you knew I owned a nightclub, right?
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. But I guess I wasn't really thinking about the musical side, which would be just such an obvious duh. But yeah.
Yeah.
Can you take listeners who aren't familiar with you through a journey of your nightclub and how you got to where you are today? I know it's such a long story, but like maybe sum it up, and because it really is such a journey, and it reminds us all about how we can get through everything and anything.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an interesting trek. I mean, I have this argument all the time about whether or not entrepreneurs can be made if they are not born. And for me, I just think I've always been wired as an entrepreneur. So when I was young, like really young, I was one of those kids that would grab a rake and, try to rake people's leaves up, or grab a snow shovel and go door to door and, shovel sidewalks and driveways. Just always kind of been par for the course there to try to make a buck or two. It led me in a lot of interesting directions over the years, from DJing in nightclubs when I was not old enough to be in clubs, and then not even old enough to own my own club, but I actually owned my own club when I was 19. That actually was a non-alcoholic club. So that's a whole other story in and of itself. But I just I've kind of always had this bug to try to figure out what is needed and create something that fills that need. And so over the years, I mean, it's been real estate development, it's been catalog companies, it's been .coms, it's been writing books and speaking and creating events and coaching people, right? So it seems like I've done just about everything over the years, and some of it has gone really, really well, and some of it, like any other venture over the years, you may hit the bumps in the road, but you just keep pressing forward.
Steve, when did you have your club, and was that in Chicago?
So I opened that when I was.
Sorry, I don't mean to put an age stamp on you, but there is a reason for me asking.
All good. No, it's all good. So that was a long time ago. I mean, we're talking like almost 30 years ago. And so I was 19 when I wrote that plan and raised money for that plan, had vision for the plan, the whole nine, and ended up opening it, I think, just after I turned 20. But that was down in Southern Illinois because I went to school at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. And so this was just actually right off of that in that area. And so I think I was officially 20 when it opened. But as I said, it was a non-alcoholic club.
Which I absolutely love, because I don't know if I've ever shared with you before that I went to school in Chicago, and I know that where the club was is not close. But
Yeah.
I went to school for interior architecture, and while a lot of my classmates and friends were going out, I would stay in because I lived in dorms where we got security checked to get into our rooms. And if we were impaired, we were not allowed into our bed that night.
Wow.
Like we had to go find somewhere else.
Really? That's just wrong.
Well, they didn't want the liability.
Okay.
So rather than go out, but I also have a very low tolerance for alcohol.
Uh-huh.
Rather than go out, I would just stay in because I didn't want to find myself on the L or on the red line out in the middle of, somewhere.
Yeah, that would not be
completely
ideal.
drunk.
Yeah.
And Steve, I've never shared this on the podcast before. When I graduated, I moved to New York to be an interior architect, an interior designer. And there was a party that I went to one evening that was thrown by a carpet company. And a coworker and I decided that we were going to just have a taste of every drink on the menu.
Everything.
Because we didn't have to pay for it. So we were young and dumb.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I wound up in the train yard in Stamford, Connecticut at 2:00 in the morning with no trains running back in the opposite direction.
That's funny.
And I didn't know the address of where I was staying because I was staying with a friend. How horrible is that? So I actually had to tell the cab driver to drive to New Rochelle and just drive around until I recognized something.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's frightening in so many ways.
Yeah, but I've learned my lesson. I mean, you definitely didn't see anything like that at New Media Summit.
Right.
I found my way back to my room.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. We will have to have evidently we'll have to have a monitor or something at the event to keep an eye on you and the others to make sure they make it back safely. And then, of course, they can get up in time for the next day's festivities.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Listeners, when you are listening to this, and this is not like, I want to go back to the conversation because it's such a great conversation with Steve. But when this episode goes live, you have 1 month left to purchase your ticket to the New Media Summit. The premiere, what would you call it? The first ever event?
The inaugural event was in September of 2017. And I have not heard one person, I have not seen one person who did not say that this was not the best event that they had ever gone to. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. You did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of fun. And, for those who aren't familiar with the event, basically, we bring in awesome people like yourself who are top podcasters from across the globe. So we bring in 40 of you guys, as we call you, the icons of influence. And we give a fairly small group of attendees, 150 attendees, the opportunity to learn from you guys over the course of a few days and really try to get a handle on how to leverage and monetize the power of new media. But the primary hook of the event is we give folks the opportunity to pitch the podcasters on who they are and what they do and literally get booked on the spot. So we learned a lot, we definitely learned a lot from that first event, no doubt. And we're doing some things that are different, I think we are improving upon the process. So it remains to be seen, but I'm excited about our new format, which is similar but different.
Well, I think every single episode on the Positive Productivity podcast that positive productivity is not about perfection, but even through minor glitches, the event was still incredible. And I don't know if you saw the messages, like the comments that even the icons were having in our own private conversations afterwards, but we were on a high for 3 days afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And then we just were like, oh, and I'm sure you were too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and look, there are, there's an actual term for it. I mean, there are people, who are seminar junkies, because there's something about being in person, especially with the way that we're set up now, it's just getting worse. I mean, in terms of people working remotely and not being in larger companies where you see, everybody on a daily basis. And so for a lot of people, those conferences are like their only chance to be human, like to get out of their own, basically to get out of the house, because so many people work at home, right? So I think that's a big reason why if a conference is done well, it can create that sort of need, if you will, to do it again and do it again quickly, right? Because a good event taps into not only people's desire to be communal, right, and connect with one another, but also it really taps into just the need that we have as humans to connect on a more intimate level. And, intimate's a term that can be taken a couple different ways. I'm just simply talking about being, with other like-minded people whose company you enjoy and you have fun with them, right? I mean, it kicks off, all of the oxytocins and endorphins and, all of that stuff that the brain needs and fires, it just fires the good stuff, right? And unfortunately, we like I said, we get so caught up in our own day-to-days that oftentimes we just don't get enough of that stimulus. And I'm not talking about going to a huge rock concert with lights and crazy this, that, or the other in terms of stimulus, but I mean that can be intellectual stimuli as well. And a good event will be a combination of good intellectual stimulus as well as more sort of emotional stimulus, if you will. So that's one of the things that we try to incorporate in all of our events, is just not only, of course, the learning aspect of it, but truly the fun.
Oh, and you did that. I've been watching Thriller with my 4-year-old daughter. She wants to learn how to do it. Yeah. And I figured maybe I'll learn how to do it for the April event.
Good. Well, yeah, you've got the whole list. It's it's Thriller. It's the Cupid Shuffle. It's the Wobble. We may kick in a chicken dance again just because we can. And we'll
I know that one.
Yeah,
one down.
Yeah, one down. Exactly. I think you actually did that one. That was impressive.
Oh, I don't know, but I've decided I'm stepping out a little bit more outside of the box this time.
Good.
Because, Steve, I had not been to any type of event before New Media Summit in close to 2.5 years, since before my twins were born. Wow. Because I found myself in my little entrepreneurial hole right here in Ohio. And I didn't realize until that how disconnected I was, even though I'm on social media and I have Skype calls and phone calls and whatever types of calls with clients all the time. But I didn't realize just how absolutely secluded I am. But on that topic, you're a dad. And the whole listening audience knows I'm a mom times like quadrillion. Sometimes it feels like. What concerns, or maybe I should rephrase that. Do you think we need to be concerned that our children are going to fall into the same secluded hole as they're growing? I mean, I see my older boy is sucked into their smartphones, and I know there's things that we can do about it, like take them away. But at the same time, they're not picking up the phone. And it's not just them. It's like all the kids in the community. Yeah. They're not picking up the phone and going out anymore. So if we take away the phone, we're taking away the social interaction that they have with their kids or with their friends, after school time.
Yeah.
But now there's online learning. My husband got his degree online. So it's a little bit concerning to me.
And reality is all you got to do is look at our kids, right? For the adults, like myself, I remember getting my first cell phone, that was something I actually went out and did, and it was a new thing, right? And that wasn't actually just a phone. So getting a phone that then had all of the apps and things to do on it, I mean, that was a whole other experience. Our kids will never know that, right? I mean, our kids grow up with this as if it's just a part of, like, an extension of their body. So what happens? Well, reality is that there are a lot of kids out there who don't know how to communicate with the child that is literally 3 feet from them, because they don't look the child in the eye, because they don't feel comfortable saying the same things to the person that they would say via their thumbs. And so, look, I think our job as parents is really to find that balance and to, for lack of a better term, police their device usage, right? I mean, I think that we have to step up to do that, because they can't help themselves. I mean, all of the pictures and the things that they see, again, most of the time, those are going to trigger positive feelings in their brain. You know, whether they're looking at a pretty girl or a pretty boy, or they're looking at a vacation spot, or they're looking at something that their friend is doing at a concert, or whatever it is. It's like, most of the time, the things that they're looking at are not reflective of how life is on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis. And so that's a challenge. That is definitely something that is not going to get better. It is going to get worse. And so, especially when you live in an environment where it's tough to do a lot outside, right? I know where you guys are, and our friends in the Northeast and the Midwest and Canada and so on, where winter hits and it hits hard. It's tougher to get out of the house during that period of time and to connect with people. And so that's a challenge. I mean, even as parents, we don't want to do it either. When it's 12 below, who wants to go out and do anything and all that, right? I mean, it's something we don't want to do, but it is something we have to do, because otherwise we do run the risk of our children not understanding how to be social and not understanding how to really thrive when things get tough, because it's so easy to kind of get those finger muscles and just kind of stand behind the wall of that device, and it's going to be challenging for our kids to understand how to really interact with people on a human level, unless we teach them how to do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've seen, especially with my 15-year-old, that he's learning. Yeah, he's learning his conversation skills from text messaging, and sometimes he thinks that what he texts can just as easily be spoken, but it does come out differently. So I've had to remind him.
Yeah, it's a different language.
No, you don't tell me LOL. He's never done that, but it's a different language. Don't talk to me like that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm realizing too that looking back at when I was a child, I remember sitting down on Friday evenings with my whole family, and we would watch the TGIF lineup on ABC. It was like Full House and a whole bunch of other shows, and E.R. may have even been on Friday nights at that time. I don't know. But now I hear more about what their mentors are doing on YouTube, specifically gamers, because that's what it is in my house. What they're doing or the trouble that they get into. And I just don't remember these things from when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's an issue in terms necessarily of, look, if you have, I mean, we're all going to, like, back in the day, right? I mean, back in the day, we used to sit around the radio, right, and listen to the stories on the radio, and then we used to sit around as families and watch the TV, and then it'll be a new device, whatever it is, as kids get older. I mean, we're going to get into this, I don't know, holographic and projection, and I mean, Lord knows what there probably won't be a device. It'll just be a place, if you will, that we sit to consume this content, whatever that is, wherever that is. But it's simply just in my way of thinking, it's just simply a matter of finding balance, no matter what the technology is. And so, even if you're sitting around watching the TGIF shows or whatever it is, as long as there is some discussion that is built into that and some sort of interaction between you that's built into that, it still can be a bonding experience. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, is just creating those bonding experiences, right? So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we're talking about.
And Steve, I think it's going to be a USB port behind our ears.
Something.
I mean, I'm thinking about the Matrix with the plug in the back of the head. I think that's a little bit too intrusive, but just a small USB port. I could use it a lot of the time, especially as I'm trying to write my book. If I could just have that USB port that could download it and write it for me, that would be awesome.
Well, and reality is that we will absolutely evolve in terms of how we learn and how we create. I mean, there's no getting around that. That is an organic, evolving process. And it's funny. One of the first websites that I created, I don't even know how long ago. It's got to be I created my first site back in 1995, so it's not going that far. But in terms of my personal brand, for a Steve Olsher type brand, I think it was 2000, I don't know, 5 or 6 or whatever it was. But anyway, the graphic image was literally like my head with an outlet, and the tagline was "Plug in, power up," and that was my head, literally what you're talking about. So I think it's coming.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you do a Wayback Machine. You'll see it at some point somewhere on there.
Oh, I'm going to. Definitely. How do you create? What is your best method for creating?
Deadlines. It's true. I mean, I'm all about deadlines, It's I'm not great without a get it done by date. There's no doubt about that. And so when what I'll do is, if I create something in my mind that basically I'll have an idea of what it is that I wanted, like the New Media Summit, right? That's a perfect example. The New Media Summit's a perfect example. So great idea, and what ideas are worth, and ideas are worth, zip, right?
Right.
Without execution. So great idea, but unless I publicly declared it, and unless I found someone to hold me accountable for bringing it to fruition, and unless I actually set a date to do it, it wouldn't have happened, right? I mean, it's just as simple as that. So yeah, it's really important in my way of thinking when I'm in creator mode to have a date. It's just like a product launch, right? I mean, you line up partners, you get people to support you, and you got to have it done. So to me, the most powerful thing of all in terms of creation is the creation of a date. I mean, I think that once you have the idea in your mind, the next most important thing is to create that drop dead date of launch.
Does it work that same way with your books?
It does when I'm writing for myself. When I'm writing for others, not so much, which is why I don't do that anymore. Because there was a point in time where I was writing for others. As a matter of fact, I still have a ghost writing project right now that I am in the middle of, and I don't see myself doing that again unless it's a ridiculous amount of money. That said, writing, it depends, right? I mean, if you're trying to get a mainstream publisher, then you need to set parameters around when you write, how often you write, and meet the deadlines that they set for you. Because if you're writing for a mainstream publisher, which basically means they buy the rights to the book, you have to meet their deadlines. So in that case, yeah, I mean, it does work. As a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons why you should get a publisher, because of the fact that you will have a deadline to meet to to basically get, the various chapters or manuscripts or book proposals or whatever it is done that you're being asked for. So if you're writing for yourself, it's a lot harder. You're writing for somebody else. In that case, if you're being paid for it, it's possible to make it happen.
Steve, I need to let listeners know that you were the first coaching that I actually paid money for. I had bartered in the past for coaching, but it hadn't gone very well.
Yeah.
And I signed up for one of your coaching programs. I don't know if you still have it, quite honestly. So I'm not, do you?
Which one? The
Blastermind?
So Blastermind I haven't done for a while. No, we put that on hold just because to me I want to make sure, like, if I'm going to be asking someone for an investment, then I want to make sure that it's like an absolute no-brainer to get a return on their investment. And right, so I'm not going to ask somebody for money unless that's clear what their return can be for them. And so we started a monthly coaching program called Blastermind. And the intention was to really help people on a monthly basis with their business dive in and get direction and so on. And what I realized kind of quickly there is that people don't really necessarily want the information. They just want access to me and they want direction from me, which is great. But it's not scalable, and some folks were not getting enough time with me based on the way that we structured it, and so I'm still toying with that model, but in terms of giving people personal direction, at that, it was $97 a month, right? And the idea was we're going to scale this, we'll do more group and that sort of thing. But what was really clear is people just needed individual guidance, and so that wasn't scalable.
Well, I have to tell you and the listeners that just based off the quick introduction call that you had with me, and I believe you had with every member entering, you told me based on that first call that chronic idea disorder, I should get an agent and a publisher. And I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, it was great.
Because I actually have an agent and a publisher waiting for my first few chapters right now and my official proposal.
Sweet.
So that's why I had to ask about books, because deadlines in writing this book are not working for me, because when I'm not inspired, like when the thought is not right in my head right now, then if I look at white paper, it stays white paper.
Right.
But what will often happen is I'll be in the shower or I'll be driving or trying to get to sleep, and all of a sudden it's like a baseball bat hitting me across the head. Like, you better get up and write this down right now. And that's when the ideas start flowing.
Yeah. And again, I think that just the fact, and congrats on, on getting somebody interested in what it is that you're looking to do there. Just the fact that you have someone to hold you accountable, I think is a really big step in the right direction, because the book itself is pretty much reflective of the process that you're going through, because it's everything else that's going to get in the way of actually writing that book. So it's all of those.
Oh my gosh, that's so right. Including the podcast.
Right. So, it's funny, right? But I mean, the book itself, it's like, in Authorland, they say that you write the book that you most need. And that's where you're at right now. I memean, it's like the reason why the book isn't getting done is because you're distracted by all the other ideas. So you need to write the book.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have to just put this out there. Last night, a dear friend and client introduced me to an app called Win the Day, and it's an extension for Chrome. And it has me write down my focus for a goal and how long it should take to reach that goal, and then daily targets. And then there's even another part of it that will keep me focused for a certain amount of time. And last night I was using it while I was getting today's podcast episode out and put up on the site, which I know I shouldn't be doing, but I still do it because I love it. And I clicked on the focused mode, and it blocks Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, all the big time suckers if you're not careful. And I decided I'm going to stick with
Yeah.
it for 25 minutes. Well, I'm putting the show notes up and I realized, well, I need to get into Facebook. And I go over there and it blocked me out. And I was like, oh, this is awesome.
It wouldn't even
And
let
I was
you
a
in.
little bit resentful of the software at the same time. But I was like, this is awesome. I can find something else to do. So I didn't realize, well, after that, then I went back to doing what I was doing and I was like, oh, I should check on this in Facebook. And I tried to do it again. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be interesting to follow for the next week as I'm using it and beyond, to see how often while I'm in what should be focus mode, that I do just wander over to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, because I'm not going to allow myself to anymore.
Yeah,
it's not going to allow me to.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it definitely is tricky. There's no doubt about that, and that's why, sometimes we are our own worst enemy.
Do you have any tricks that keep you focused during the day?
Well, yes and no, right? For me, it again just boils down to I have to have something in front of me that needs to be completed. And that's why, I mean, again, I know that sounds odd, but it's a matter of having enough things to do. It's a matter of having a big enough plate where you can handle a number of different things. So that's how I look at it, right? Is what is most important on that plate right now based on the deadlines. Like, for instance, I will be, so on a week from yesterday, I will be shooting the new videos for our Profiting from Podcast launch. Well, if you've ever done videos before, there's two ways to do it. You can just have a general understanding what you're going to talk about and wing it, or you can literally script it and go from a teleprompter. And what I have found is that in certain ways, winging it works. But in a launch environment, having a script and having something that you actually follow is going to be much more effective, right? So in this case, I have to get the scripts done because we're shooting a week from yesterday, right? And so that will literally shut everything else off between now and then, or at least between now and when it's done. And so, yeah, that's one of the things where just, especially if other people are relying on you, and I think that's why having a team and bringing people in to hold you accountable to some extent is super, super important, because you're letting other people down if you don't deliver, right? And so when I bring in partners, some good size major partners here to help with the launch, if everything isn't ready from a tech side, if everything isn't ready from an asset side, if everything isn't ready for that launch, I'm going to end up burning bridges, right? And so it's one of those things where you have to play a bigger game, right? You have to play a game where if you don't do something and you're the only one who's impacted by it, you can still go to bed at night and just be like, that didn't work out. But when you bring other people into the equation and now your actions impact their lives somehow or impact the quality of the relationship that you have with them, I think you're going to make much different decisions.
Right. You got to know, well, going right to your book, what is your what? You got to know what your what is. And you got to know when to say no, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So that you can get that done.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. I know that I just got to say, I so appreciate you coming onto the podcast. I appreciate all the opportunities that you have provided to me. And listeners, if you can be at New Media Summit in April or anytime in the future, I strongly encourage you to go and just connect with Steve in whatever product launches you see him have, because the content and the material is amazing. I can tell you that I saw awesome shifts, and I'll put links in the show notes to where you can hear me talking about that in the show notes, which you can find at thekimsutton.com/PP300. But again, Steve, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Where can listeners connect with you online, get to know more, get your awesome resources?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, everything that folks need, including information on the New Media Summit and so on, is available at Steve Olsher, Olsher.com. And, of course, the best way for you to get to know me and for us to get to know one another is to come and hang out in person, right? So let's, if you can't make the New Media Summit work in April, we actually do it twice a year. So I think the next one will be in the fall sometime. We haven't set the date yet for that. But I don't know if we'll be sold out or not by the time this airs. I know we sold out last time about a month before, so we'll see where we're at. But obviously, we'd love to have you at the next one.
And sold out would be an understatement because, I mean, it was such a great event, listeners, that not only was it sold out, but everybody plus a couple came. So it wasn't just like the tickets were sold, but it was close to 100% show up, which blows my mind. I'm going to have to learn lessons about that from you.
Technically, it was like...
Yeah,
right. We'll talk about that another day. But no, technically, it was like 100.3% show up rate. It was, it was pretty nuts. Yeah, it makes me proud. It makes me happy.
Steve, do you have a parting piece of advice or a golden nugget that you can offer to listeners?
What I will say is, I mean, look, we're obviously talking about productivity, and so, well, we've been talking about a lot, but I know the focus of the show here is around productivity. So the one thing I will say is when you think about productivity, and certainly as it relates to your time, fact is that there's really only two ways to use your time. You can spend your time or you can invest your time. And if you spend your time, it's a lot like spending your money. I mean, you wanted something, you bought it, and that money's gone. You can't invest it, and a dollar is no longer a dollar. The dollar is gone. Versus, of course, if you invest it, hopefully that dollar turns into $1.10 or $1.20 or $2 or whatever it works out to be. And so just think about that in terms of your time. Am I spending my time right now or am I investing my time? And most of the time, if you are creating something, you are, in my way of thinking, you're investing your time. And so the important thing to really think about as far as how you use your time is concerned is, am I putting something forth for the world to judge? And if you're putting something forth for the world to judge, then you are in certainly what I would call that creator mode. And that creator mode is absolutely invaluable, and that's where certainly the magic happens. But most of the time, people do not want to get judged by others, and they don't want to put themselves out there and open themselves up to the criticism. But just remember, if you don't open yourself up to the criticism, you're not going to open yourself up to the glory either. So just keep it in mind.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Positive Productivity Podcast. When I'm not podcasting, I'm supporting 6 to 7 figure business coaches with their marketing automation and entrepreneurs like you through my coaching and mastermind programs. I want to invite you to visit thekimsutton.com to learn how I can help you take your business to the next level.